The Zenith El Primero is kind of like the Infinity Stones. Whoever possesses it, it kind of gives them powers. It alters the reality to make them be a watch brand that makes a high quality, high technology chronograph. But what about when Zenith has taken that power into their own hands? The Zenith Chronomaster is probably one of the most underrated, underappreciated watches, and it's kind of a victim of its own success for Zenith because no one even knows that it's the Chronomaster. Really, if it wasn't until the 2021 release of the Chronomaster Sport that caused all the controversy for looking so much like a Daytona, the majority of people probably wouldn't even know the Chronomaster name. Everyone looks at the watch that you're seeing on the screen and just thinks, oh, that's the El Primero. It doesn't even say Chronomaster on the dial, it just says El Primero. However, not because it's underappreciated and definitely underrated, doesn't mean it's by any way a bad watch. On the contrary, it's actually an amazing watch and an amazing homage to Zenith's history. And the more you know about the Chronomaster, the more context it gives to the Chronomaster Sport. First and foremost because the two share a lot of DNA. In fact, barring the difference of the movement and the bezel, they're basically the same watch. Looking at the case, you can see that it has a lot of different playing with different finishes as well as different lines and straight lines versus curves. If you look along the side, it's more curvaceous, but then it has these really aggressive squared off lugs and then a nice bevel across the side. All this helps give it a really nice balanced look and feel when you're talking about the case. And then when you bring it onto the dial, the first thing you see, of course, is that tritone of the blue, the dark gray, and then the light gray for the subdials, where you have that shock of red showing you the chronograph seconds, moving super smooth compared to most other chronographs because of that El Primero and its high beat on the inside. And then there's the fact that they overlap as well, which gives it a very different look to most chronographs. Some people might argue that it's harder to read, but at the end of the day, it gives it a little bit of different flair, and unless you're being really precise, for most people it won't really matter. But even then, it has all these details like the full applied indices as well as applied logo, giving it not only a more luxurious look, but also adding a lot more depth to the dial, making it more of a 3D affair as opposed to just print on a dial. And then you look a little bit closer, you see the nice pattern that's on each and every subdial. So not only do they have differential colors, they have this engraved pattern into them that again gives it more texture, a little bit more depth, makes it a lot nicer to look at. But all of these details are so nice and subtle that they make for a watch that's extremely classical. This is a watch that would be just as home in the 60s as it would be in the 2020s. And that might be its strength and its fault, because at the end of the day, it means it doesn't necessarily stand out of its time for being so stylized, but also it's a great advantage because it means that, it's always current, it's always up to date, and it doesn't cause any controversy like its successor. And on the wrist, it reflects that. It measures 42 millimeters, so nice modern sizing, but it's only 12.75 millimeters high, so only a little bit thicker than the Daytona. And more importantly, this means it's extremely versatile. With 100 meters water resistance, you don't have to worry about if it gets wet or if it's humid, and it even has a rubber-lined leather strap, which means that if it is hot or humid, it doesn't feel nasty on the wrist, though you might want to change out the strap if you want to take advantage of that 100 meters of water resistance it has. So really it's an amazing all-rounder because the styling is classical. You can wear this as your dress watch. The leather strap is extremely comfortable. It has a nice double deployant as well that's properly designed, has little details like the Zenith star on it. It even has sort of an offset length for the double deployant, so one side is a little bit shorter, making it a little bit easier to close up, a little bit more user-friendly than one that's just stamped equal. It shows again that attention to detail that Zenith puts into its watches, and it doesn't wear like a gigantic watch, so you can really wear this for going to work, for if you want to change it out and go to the beach with it, no problem. If you want to just wear it as your day-to-day watch, it's nice and sporty, but not so sporty that it prohibits what you can use. It really is almost a perfect all-rounder in that sense. But obviously, we can't talk about any Zenith watch without talking what's on the inside. Inside we have the tried and true Zenith El Primero 400. This is technically the 400B. You can tell it by having the date at the 6 o'clock. But apart from that, it's what we know and love. Column wheel chronograph beating at 36,000 BPH, fully integrated and automatic, a direct descendant from the one that was released in 1969 that lays claim to being the first automatic integrated chronograph, hence the name El Primero. which in Spanish means the first. And it's an amazing testament to time, the fact that this watch was so advanced for when it came out, and it's still being used today, and it still actually competes quite well with other chronographs. So you need to remember, Rolex elevated the bar only in 2000 with the 70-hour power reserve, changing the architecture to be column wheel and vertical clutch versus column wheel and lateral clutch. And also the Rolex Calibre 4130 isn't much to look at, while the El Primero has all these different finishes. It's on display, even the different colorations, the fact that they blued the column wheel now. If you got one of the open work versions, you would see a silicone escapement which would be rendered in purple. And that's before you talk about the Geneva stripes on the rotor, the perlage on some of the different plates. It really just makes it something that's amazing to look at and just adds again to the appeal of this watch and really shows just how much value you're getting this watch. It's amazing that the Chronomaster line has housed the El Primero since the 90s, but it still looks so up to date. Obviously it's had a few revisions over the last few years, different sizing, etc. But still, that general shape just looks so classic and it makes it such a great watch. So let's sum up the highlights of this watch with the positives and negatives. Hands down, the first positive is the dial design, as well as all the different dials you can get. You can get open dials, you can get partially open dials, you can get different colors, you can get monochrome, you can get Bamford edition ones, or you can go with the classic A386 inspired tritone. Whatever flavor you want, there is a Zenith Chronomaster for you. And that's definitely a big advantage, and people who know about Zenith will recognize that A386 style dial right away and know that you're into watches. So it opens a lot of interesting doors. The second positive point is that it is that all-rounder. 100-meter water resistance, not too thick, leather strap, but lined with rubber. You can wear it for formal, you can wear it for informal. Whatever need you have, you can accommodate with this watch, which makes it a great only watch, it makes it a great first watch. It really is an incredibly versatile machine. And then the last advantage is, again, that movement and how advanced it was for its time. Column wheel chronograph, so it has an amazing actuation feeling. 55-hour power reserve means you don't have to wear it and wind it every day. It'll last you a little bit longer than your run-of-the-mill 7750 or ETA 2894. That high beat makes it incredibly accurate. The fact that there's so many vibrations going on, essentially what that means when it comes to accuracy and keeping good time is it means that there are more beats happening. So it means if you miss a beat, if there's a beat error, you have more space. It doesn't impact as much as whereas you have a lower beat rate, something like a 28.8, 21.6. With those, obviously, fewer beats happening, so if one goes wrong, it has a bigger impact on your overall timekeeping. Consider this was a movement whose architecture was based in 1969, and it still eclipses something like the Valjoux 7750, which it's supposed to compete with. But of course, no watch is perfect, and we have to talk about the downsides too. And the first thing is that while I do like that leather strap is rubber lined, it is 21 millimeters, which means you're not going to be able to fit each and every strap that you have. If you have other watches in your collection, you'll probably know by now that the majority of watchmakers will either go with 20 millimeter spacing or 22 millimeter spacing on modern watches. So having 21, it means you'll either have to squeeze a 22 in or have a little bit of a gap for a 20 millimeter, or you have to hunt down specifically to get a 21 millimeter strap. Now, a lot of strap manufacturers are starting to catch on to that, but at the end of the day, it limits the versatility, especially as part of a collection. It's better to have normal strap sizing. The second disadvantage is the odd crown positioning. The fact that you have to pull it out all the way to change the date instead of just one stop, which is where you would change the time. Trust me, it sounds like a small thing, but the amount of times that I fucked up the date because I was just trying to change the time, or the amount of times that I messed up the time because I was just trying to change the date, it's something that you definitely have to get used to. If this is your only watch, it's not the end of the world by a stretch. But if you have this as part of a collection, if you're rotating it between other watches that use conventional crown positioning, it can get a little bit annoying. And then the last disadvantage is that while yes, this is a very advanced movement for its time, it is now just starting to show its age, for lack of a better way to put it. Those 55 hours aren't top of the hill now. There are options that are 70 hours or even more. There are options that have better anti-magnetic properties, even within Zenith itself. It doesn't have hacking seconds, so for all that advantage that it has in having the higher beat rate and more space to keep better time, you can't really measure that easily by properly syncing it up with a reference. Unless you have a time grapher, you're not really going to know what your accuracy is like. And if you have a little bit of OCD like me, it's just going to annoy you. And of course, that horizontal clutch means that you do have a little bit of judder when you start and stop it. And if you keep the chronograph running for a really, really long time, it can affect the longevity of your movement when compared to a vertical clutch, which is the current preferred architecture for a chronograph. But if I'm honest, these are all very little things and things that you can get used to and work around for the most part. So I think it's a great watch, and especially for the price that it commands. Now, it costs $7,700 at retail. At the time of making this, when I went on the Zenith website, I couldn't actually find it anymore. So they may just be going through a few changes. I know they just updated their website, or this may be a sign that is on its way out to be discontinued. I found the old link to it, but then that didn't have a picture of it. So I'm not sure if it's still actually actively on sale. My guess is that with the release of the new Chronomaster Sport, the idea is that that will replace this. So all that means that we have to focus more on the pre-owned. And in pre-owned, you're looking at anywhere from as low as $3,800 up to $8,700, depending on your preference of which dial, whether it's open, whether it's partial, whether it's closed dial, which colors, some colors are more popular than others, and whether it's on a bracelet or on a leather strap. So it's a pretty wide range, but it means that these watches are extremely accessible. And when you put that into comparison with other, for lack of a better way to put it, old school style chronographs, things like the Omega Speedmaster, for example. The recently discontinued version with the 1863 with sapphire sandwich, and for argument's sake, let's put it on a leather strap too, just to make apples to apples comparisons. With that, you're looking at a much more old school style type of chronograph, and you're looking at $4,800 up to $7,500. And that's also including whatever marginal excitement there is for the fact it was just discontinued, but there's also tons available, and it is essentially the cliche go-to chronograph when you're getting your first chronograph. So it makes for a really compelling proposition, and I think if you buy this right, you're definitely going to be getting a killer watch with a lot of features that can be your all-rounder, and it's a very addictive watch if I'm honest. I had this watch for a month and I really didn't want to give it back. But thanks again to the follower of the channel who did lend it in. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the Chronomaster? Why do you think the Chronomaster has gone so largely unnoticed in the general watch community's discourse? And it's only getting more attention now that it's been replaced by the more controversial Chronomaster Sport. If you want to know more about my opinions on the Chronomaster Sport, make sure you check the link in the description below, as well as the link to why the Zenith El Primero movement is so important. That'll give you a bit more context as to the history of the El Primero, as well as what other watches it's appeared in. And of course, if you like this video, make sure you like it and share it. If you want to see more pictures of this El Primero, as well as the infographics I use throughout this and all my other videos, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Shaluso. And if you want to see more watch videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell as well so you know when the next video comes up. In any case, thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.